Hi everyone, welcome to tonight's Facebook and Instagram Live. I'm Christine Daal from Fashion Angel Warrior, and tonight is episode number 52. We are going to talk about Made in the USA, tips for producing locally. This is a big topic, so I hope you all are excited to hear about this because we've got a lot to cover for today. So if you are on Instagram, this video will be deleted at the end of this broadcast. So if you miss any of this, you can head on over to our Facebook group, The Fearless Fashionpreneur, and you can watch all of the replays there. Oh, thanks. Thanks so much. If you also have trouble hearing me on Instagram, I don't know why. There's issues sometimes with the audio on Instagram. You can head on over to our Facebook group, The Fearless Fashionpreneur, and watch us live there. All the replays are up there as well. Hi, Daniela. How are you? Nice to see you on. Don't forget to give me your hearts. Give me your thumbs up. I want this to be as interactive as possible. If you guys have questions as we go along, definitely type them in. Hi, Lana Dean. And I will try to answer all of them for you. So, how many of you are starting or thinking of producing a line here in the USA? Give me a yes. Give me a that's me. I want to hear from you guys. How many of you would like to produce a line in the USA? Hi, Love Allie. How are you? Hi, Sherry. Yes. Okay. Danielle says yes. Daniela says me. Nurse Jean, yes. Okay. Awesome. So maybe you've tried reaching out to manufacturers and no one's taking you seriously, or even worse, maybe you've already been taken advantage of by a manufacturer and you're wondering, is there really anyone out there that I can trust? I already do, but it isn't easy, says the Oblong Box Shop. Okay. Yes. You're in San Diego. Okay, but you're not far from LA. So tonight we're going to talk about Made in the USA, tips for producing locally. A lot of designers, both startups and established designers, I find, have no clue what to expect when trying to produce a line in the USA. So we're going to dive deep into the pros and cons of producing domestically versus overseas, 10 things that are going to affect your garment cost, a lot of misconceptions regarding capabilities and lead times, as well as how to work with a factory and more. So let's get started. Okay, so pros and cons. Oh, and Nurse Jean's in Miami. Awesome. Did I meet you at the ATSM show? I wonder. Okay, so let's talk about the differences between domestic and overseas factories. So there's a lot of pros, right, to producing here locally. Number one, quality control. You're definitely going to be able to check on your stuff, go visit the factory, oversee things, fix problems when they come up a lot quicker and faster. So that's definitely a pro to producing here in the US. Obviously, communication. It's a lot easier to communicate with American manufacturers than it is to communicate with overseas manufacturers. If those of you who have worked with overseas, you would definitely know what I'm talking about. You ask for green, they give you blue. There's a lot of miscommunication that can go on when you're working with overseas vendors. And a lot can get lost in translation. So that's definitely a plus. Obviously, small minimums, which is where most of you, I'm sure, that are just starting out are thinking about doing smaller minimums. That's definitely a plus to producing here in the US. For the most part, you can pretty much do any quantity you want, whereas overseas, there are definitely higher minimums. Hey, Erin, how are you? Faster speed to market. It's obviously a lot easier to get your stuff. You're not waiting 4 weeks for something to come over on a boat, let's just say, if you were producing overseas. So that's obviously a plus. And it's actually greener if you really think about it at the end of the day. In the US, we have a lot more stricter rules when it comes to what materials you can use and how companies can actually dispose of their waste. You're using less fuel. It obviously is less fuel to ship something within the continental US than it is to boat something from, let's say, Hong Kong to LA, right? Hi, So Chic Petite. How are you? And then, of course, thinking about all the pollution, there's obviously a reason why in China they all wear those face masks, because the pollution is definitely a problem. So it's definitely greener to produce here in the US. So there's obviously a lot of reasons why it's better to produce here in the USA. So why is everyone not producing here? And why is it not as easy as it looks, right? So there's also a lot of cons to producing here in the US. And the number one con to producing here in the US is, of course, cost. So let's talk about cost for a minute. So The cost of your garment is going to be determined by a number of things. Number one, the number of pieces that are actually in the garment, right? So if you're doing something that's got front and back, a side, and 2 sleeves, it's not that many pieces. But when you're getting into things that have 20, 30, or 40 pattern pieces, that's definitely going to cost you a lot more. Also, the type of seam and hem finishes that you're using. If you're trying to use things like flat lock stitching or French seams, those are going to cost a lot more than something as simple as an overlock or marrow stitch, okay? Also, whether your garment has lining or no lining. Obviously, the more things, again, put inside your garment, the higher the cost is going to be. How intricate is your design? Are you throwing everything in the kitchen sink on top of this thing, or is it very, very simple? That's obviously going to add to the cost. The number of sizes that you do, which is why I always recommend to all my clients, try to keep your size range small, like 4 to 5 sizes max, because you don't want to end up doing a gazillion sizes. It's going to end up costing you more money. Then, of course, the quantity, how many you're actually producing at the end of the day, because the more that you produce, the cheaper the cost will be. And also keep in mind, sometimes the cost is determined whether or not the factory actually wants to work with you or not, or whether they actually want to do it or not. Some factories are going to charge you more if they think you're a pain in the butt and they really don't want to work with you, or they think they're going to have to hold your hand the entire time and they're going to charge you more for it. So that can definitely affect your cost. And then the number one factor of cost is obviously minimum wage and the amount of time that it takes to actually produce something. So obviously here in the US, we have minimum wage laws that you have to be paid a certain amount. And in New York City, I believe it's $10.50 an hour. Obviously in other countries like China and India, they don't have these types of laws. So people are paid very, very little. People are paid $1 an hour, $2 an hour, $5 a day. Like, that's how you're getting things so cheap when you go to places like Forever 21 and Zara and all these other mass market places, okay? So you have to understand, we have laws around minimum wage and you have to pay people a certain amount per hour. So when you're making your garments, it's going to affect your garment cost big time, because if your garment is very complicated and takes a long amount of time to make, the higher the cost is going to be, okay? So number two, the second con of producing here in the US, you have to understand is capabilities. And there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to capabilities of what can actually be produced here in the US. So number one, you have to think about machinery. Not all factories have all types of machinery. It's not available everywhere. Things like a flat lock machine are not very common in New York City, but they're very common in LA. So if you were to make something like activewear or swimwear, you'd be better off producing something like that in LA than you would be in New York City, for example. And then there's other just types of products that are not really good to make here. I get people all the time coming to me telling me that they want to do a t-shirt line and they want to sell their t-shirts for $20. You cannot produce a t-shirt, meaning making a t-shirt from scratch. You're picking the fabric, you're having it sewn and made from scratch and sell it at retail for $20 and make a profit in the US. You cannot do it. It's impossible. So if you're thinking about doing these low-end type lines where you're selling things for $20, $30, $50, $60, it's not happening here in the US. I tell people all the time, you really can't produce something in the US for under $80 retail. It's just impossible because the actual labor cost is just too high. Hi, Naima. How are you? Nice to see you on. Sorry about the sirens. Things like hand beading. If you're doing these crazy hand beaded evening gowns or something, unless you're selling them for $20,000, you're not producing that here in the US. Hand beading is so expensive here in the US. Why? Because it's very labor intensive, which requires a lot of time, which adds up when you start adding the minimum wage. So people make these kinds of things in India because it's so much cheaper and it's what they're good at, right? So you have to kind of have an understanding of the type of products that are not good to make here in the US. Also keep in mind, if you're making a wide range of products, meaning you're doing denim and t-shirts and swimwear and children's wear or something ridiculous, right? That would be pretty ridiculous. Hopefully you're not doing all those things. But let's just say you're doing a wide range of products. You're not going to be able to find one factory that's going to be capable of doing all of those products well for you. There might be factories that tell you that they can do all those products, but they probably won't be able to do them very well. So you're going to end up working with a lot of different factories. Whereas overseas, a lot of times you can find one factory that can do everything for you. And then of course, understand that a lot of the factories here are not vertical, meaning they can't offer you all of the services that a lot of overseas factories can offer you. So things like being able to do your fabric sourcing and create your tech packs for you and provide labels and hang tags and all these types of things. A lot of the manufacturers in the US don't do all of that. A lot of them, especially in New York City, don't even do their cutting in-house because it takes too much space to have a cutting room or have a cutting area, I should say, to have these large cutting tables. And in New York City, rent is so high that these manufacturers don't even want to pay for the space to have it. So they outsource everything. And they'll probably refer you to somebody that can do your cutting, that can do your hang tags and labels, that will be able to help you with fabric sourcing. And we do a lot of fabric sourcing and tech packs for our clients for that very reason, because a lot of manufacturers here don't offer those types of services. Hi, Camilla, how are you? Nice to see you on. So, is this information good so far? I want to hear from you guys. You guys are quiet. There's a lot of you on, so I want to hear from you. Are you enjoying this? Are you getting a lot out of it? Do you have any questions? I know the comments are a little delayed, so I'm going to wait a second. Hi, Ladybug. Okay, you're giving me your hearts. You're giving me your thumbs up. All right, great. It's very good. Okay, awesome. Super. So the next misconception is lead times. Everyone thinks that, yes, you can produce here faster because you're not having to wait to boat things over and so on and so forth, which is true. But keep in mind, most manufacturers in the US are still going to quote you a 4 to 6 week lead time. And there's many reasons for this because, one, you're not their only customer. And two, it just depends when they actually receive all the things that they actually need from you. So most startup designers don't actually have everything prepared on time, ready to go to give to the manufacturer so that they can actually start their production. So you're gonna need more wiggle room time to get all that stuff ready. Also keep in mind, most of your fabrics are not being produced here in the US. There are very, very few mills still left in the US. So most of your fabrics are still coming from overseas. So you still have to wait a time period, unless your fabric's in stock or depending on how much you're actually ordering, to get your fabric. So it's still gonna take you a while to actually produce your line here in the US. Also understand that when other countries have their holidays, such as Chinese New Year, which is typically in February, and when all of Europe goes on vacation in August, things get really, really crazy here in the US because people know they can't get stuff made from overseas, so they come here and make stuff here in the US. We used to do it all the time for all the fashion companies that I worked for. So February and August are the busiest times to get anything produced here in the US, and you're most likely to have a lead time of 8 weeks or longer during that time, just because everyone's trying to get stuff all at once. So you have to kind of keep these things in mind when you're thinking about producing here in the US. Awesome. Okay, now let's talk about, now that you have a little bit background on producing in the US, let's talk about how to actually work with a manufacturer. So there's a lot of factory etiquette. And I feel like most of this is common sense, but common sense isn't always common. So let's go over it because I feel like a lot of you can use a refresher on this. So number one, don't just show up at a factory unannounced. They're a business. You want to respect their time. Make an appointment. Call ahead of time, email, and make a proper appointment to meet with someone to go over your project, okay? Do your research. Make sure that you're contacting a factory that's actually capable of doing the type of products that you design. If not, you're just wasting their time and they're not going to be happy about it. So definitely do your research before reaching out to a manufacturer. Number three, have a go-to list of questions to ask when you're meeting with these manufacturers. And we have an entire cheat sheet on questions to ask a manufacturer when you're sourcing your manufacturers. And if you want the cheat sheet, you can get it by coming to the Tex World show in 2 weeks and coming to our seminar on Wednesday, July 25th. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that information at the end. So you can get that checklist by coming to the event. Also, after the meeting is over, make sure you follow up with them and send them an email and thank them for their time. They will definitely appreciate this so much more, okay? Next, you need to view your relationship with this factory as a partnership, okay? They want you to succeed so that obviously you're going to come back and keep bringing them more business. So you want to view it as a partnership. You want to think about it as, you know, they're helping you as much as you're helping them. So, you know, don't be that crazy person that's disrespectful and screaming and making all these crazy demands. Like, they will throw you out in a second and not take you seriously. So just keep that in mind and treat them like they are your business partner, okay? Also, you need to understand that they get paid to make things for you. They do not get paid to teach you. So if they find that you don't understand what you're talking about, they constantly have to explain things and go over things, they're going to be very annoyed and they're not going to want to work with you. So I work with a lot of manufacturers that honestly won't even work with you unless you're a client of mine. And that's the relationship I have with them, because they know that if you're working with me, I'm properly training you and it's going to save them so much time and headache along the way. So there's some manufacturers that just flat out won't work with you unless you're a Fashion Angel Warrior client. And there's other manufacturers that are just going to turn you away and kind of dismiss you if they think they're going to have to sit there and hold your hand and teach you along the way. So just keep that in mind and understand that if that's happened to you, that could be part of the reason why that's happened to you. A couple other things. Most factories do not need a tech pack right out of the gate. You just need to give them a quick sketch, a flat sketch, front, back, side, detail views with some construction callouts, some hem and seam finishes, your fabric information, a fabric swatch, things like that. Just very basic, some specs, some measurements, what your model measurements are going to be. They just need some basic information to get started. So don't go crazy making this full-blown tech pack in the beginning and paying someone to do these crazy tech packs for you, because half the time things are going to change in the development process. You're going to go through iterations of different garments by the time you're done with this whole thing, and your whole idea could change. So there's no point in spending all this money doing a beautiful, beautiful tech pack until you're actually at the end and the garment's perfected and you're ready to go to production. Also, don't ask a factory to sign a non-compete or an NDA. Most factories that I work with will not sign them. They will not take you seriously. They will definitely think you are a newbie if you say, can you please sign an NDA? And a lot of them just won't do it. It's impossible for them to protect your stuff. There's just too many people that come into the factories that see stuff. They've got too many employees working there. They've got designers coming in, checking on their own things. They've got people like me, consultants coming in. So it would be impossible for them to actually protect your stuff so that no one would see it. And so no one's going to sign an NDA or a non-compete. So just get that out of your head. Your idea isn't as good as you think it is, or, you know, it doesn't need to be protected as much as you think it does. So get over the whole NDA thing and just work with a factory, okay? Also, don't try to negotiate a price right off the bat. You have no leg to stand on. You haven't given them any business. You haven't proven that you're going to be successful. So it's really, really important that you don't try to go in there with a negotiating type of attitude right off the bat and start negotiating price. You want to develop that relationship. Again, this is a partnership. So you want to develop that relationship with them so that they take you seriously and want to actually work with you. Otherwise, they'll just turn you away at the end of the day. Okay, Danielle has a good question. What about a work for hire agreement? You don't really need that either, Danielle. So don't worry about any of that. Like anything that would be considered like anything along those lines, most manufacturers are not going to sign anything like that. Yes, when it comes time to production, you want to have a PO, a production order, a purchasing order with your factory that states a lot of guidelines, which I go over with a lot of my clients, what your terms will be. But other than that, you don't want to have anything else. Okay. And then also understand that most manufacturers are going to want to actually sew up a sample themselves before actually doing your production. So if you went somewhere else to make your samples, or you hired a separate pattern maker, or you did your own paper patterns and samples, they're gonna look at your paper pattern or your sample and they're gonna say, okay, but we have to make one first. And it's not that they're trying to get more money out of you or rip you off or make you pay a sample price to get a sample done. It's because A, they wanna make sure they can actually make it for you. B, they wanna make sure they can actually give you a fair estimate. And C, you actually want them to do this so that they'll actually show that they can actually produce this garment for you. So it's actually best to have them do this. So don't freak out if they're like, why are they asking me to make all my samples all over again? It's for a reason. They want to make sure that they can actually do it at the price that you need. And you want to make sure they can actually do it and do it well, because you don't want to just give someone your production and have it come out all messed up and not the way that you actually wanted it. So those are some tips for working with a manufacturer. And if you enjoyed this and you want to learn more, don't miss our seminar at TexWorld, which is a textile sourcing show coming up in New York City. We're doing a seminar called Made in the USA. It's a panel discussion on how to produce a fashion line in America. And we're also going to talk about where American manufacturing is headed. So that's Wednesday, July 25th at 11 a.m. You're going to be able to hear from two of my top manufacturers that I actually work with. One of them does apparel, the other one does handbags, as well as an industry expert and founder of Save the Garment District. So we're going to have some great panelists that are going to be there. They're going to discuss from their point of view what their biggest pet peeves are when people reach out to them, how you should be working with a manufacturer, what you can expect, etc. So definitely register for the event. You can go to fashionninjawarrior.com/events to register for the TexWorld event, for the seminar, and to register for the actual show, TexWorld. Also, if you are looking to produce in New York City, our last New York City Fashion Manufacturing Tour is coming up next week, July 19th. There are still 3 spots left, I believe. So hurry up and get your tickets. It is the last one we're going to be doing for a while. Plus, you're going to actually get our list of our top 50 preferred vendors and suppliers by attending this fashion tour. So you don't want to miss it. Go to fashiontour15.eventbrite.com. Okay, Daniela has a question. What if a manufacturer asks you for garments similar to what you're designing, but you can't find anything too close for some of your styles? Should I make an initial sample myself for them to get an idea? It really depends. You should be able to find something that's similar, whether it has similar details or whether the fit is similar, but the style is different. Even if you have to buy 5 garments and say, well, I like the neck of this one, but the body of this one and the sleeve of this one and that sort of thing, pretty much everything's been done already. So I would continue looking to see if there's something similar out there to what you're actually making. If not, you could make an initial sample yourself. I would just do it in muslin or a substitute fabric to kind of give them an idea, but I wouldn't go too crazy, like spending a ton of time making your own pattern, making your own sample, that sort of thing, because they're going to want to do it all over again anyway themselves. So yes, I hope that helped, Daniela. All right, guys, so that's it for tonight's Facebook Live, episode 52, Made in the USA, Tips for Producing in America. Next week, we are going to do a Facebook Live Q&A, so all of your wonderful questions, things that have been stumping you in your business, things that are prohibiting you from moving forward, get those questions ready. Start posting them now inside the Fearless Fashionpreneur Facebook group so that I can answer them. Just use the hashtag AskFaw, ask F-A-W, and you can tag me when you post your questions. And we'll be back next week, next Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to answer all of your questions. All right, guys, love you. Hope you got a lot out of tonight, and I will talk to y'all soon. Bye.